Everybody. In today's session, the concept which we are going to deal with is marketing research. What is this marketing research? In all our previous sessions, we have been discussing a lot about marketing, consumer preferences, needs, wants, etc. Now, to do an effective marketing, what is most important? The most important thing is data. How do you get this data? By researching the market. What is researching the market for? You have to research the market and find out ways for effective marketing strategies. Effective marketing strategies so that your marketing efforts doesn't go waste. In other words, marketing research can be defined as collection of data required to carry out effective marketing and analyzing the same to devise profitable marketing strategies. Profitable marketing strategies. So this is called as marketing research. Now, having known about this marketing research, is it going to be a very simple process? It is pretty hypothetical to ask whether the process is simple or complex. It's a hypothetical question because it depends on the individual marketer. But anyway, what is common is that marketing research has 8 steps. 8 steps which a marketer needs to carry out. A marketer carries out. What are those 8 different steps? Let us list it right now. The 8 steps of marketing. The first step is problem formulation. This is the first and foremost step, and then comes the method of inquiry. And then research design, and then data collection design, and then comes planning, survey and design. Then the collection of data happens, the data collection, and then after collecting data you need to analyze or interpret data collected, and finally after analyzing this you prepare a research report. So these are all the 8 different steps which any marketer does as part of his marketing research process. So these are all the 8 steps which are very important individually and as a combination, because this helps in formulating the best strategy for your product to be marketed and thereby your product to be sold at a very high profit margin. Now, having seen about this, let us see all these things one by one. The first step is problem formulation. What is this problem formulation? Before going to do any research or any type of activity, you need to know what you want first of all. What is the problem? Here, the problem which we are talking about is selling products or services in accordance to customer needs. In accordance to customer needs. This is what we have been seeing in the previous sessions also. And for doing this, how to solve this problem? So first, to make this happen, you have to specify the objective of your research. Specify the objective of your research so that you don't miss out on most important things in further processes. This specification will help you in developing effective research. Anybody can do research, but the difference lies in the research that is done being effective and one among the best. And effective research will help the decision maker to evaluate properly the strategies. And for a successful evaluation and a productive evaluation of strategies, the specified objectives which we are doing here should be manageable and clear. The specified objectives which is being done should be manageable and really clear, so that the problem that is being formulated is concurrent with the objectives. What should be concurrent with the objectives? The problem that is being formulated. And having done this, you have to review the environment. Because the environment, in other words, the marketing environment is the place where you are going to impart your strategy. So you have to review that environment to know the context of the problem. The problem will have several angles, but the particular problem, for example, you want to sell a pen. What is that you need to do? You can sell it anywhere. You can sell it within your country, you can sell it outside the country, you can sell it for 1 rupee, you can sell it for 5 rupees. But what is the context here? The context is you have to sell the pen at a profit margin which is going to give you sufficient funds in addition to what you had as a cost for the pen. In other words, the profit should be sufficiently high to manage your business. So for any company, what is the basic formula? The selling price of any product is going to be the cost price plus the profit. So this profit should be high to manage your business. For this, you need to explore the nature of the problem. And most importantly, you have to define the relationships between variables. Which can be either independent or dependent variable in the process. What is it? What is that what I am trying to tell here? For example, for selling a pen, there is a variable called a customer need, which is given as CN. Now, this customer need should arise to use a pen. So this is a very important variable as far as selling this pen is concerned. So now when CN is customer need, and let us see the price of the pen as P. Now you have to relate these two things, because a customer has a need, but if the price is going to be, need is high, if the price is going to be even more higher, the customer will not buy this product, may not buy this product if he can get it from some other vendor or seller. So you need to carefully identify the relationship between customer need and price in this particular situation. Here I have given only two variables. Like this, there will be a lot of variables, and you have to interrelate these variables to arrive at a perfect problem formulation strategy, so that you can identify the alternate course of action if the particular strategy fails. Alternate course of action, and you can manage the consequences also. So this is what the problem formulation is all about. Now, having known about the problem formulation, the next process is method of inquiry. What is this method of inquiry all about? The method of inquiry is the method by which you carry out the process of research. It can be either a scientific method or a subjective method. A scientific method is also called as quantitative research method, and subjective methodology is called as qualitative method. Here it's a qualitative method. Generally people prefer scientific method for doing a research, because here existing knowledge access starting point. You have something to back up on here. So the scientific method is the standard investigation pattern for any particular research methodology, and proceed impartially here. So this is the important thing in scientific or quantitative research methodology. When you talk about scientific method, the scientific method involves formulation of the problem again, and then it talks about the development of hypothesis, and when you develop the hypothesis, then you make predictions based on the hypothesis, devise an hypothesis test, conduct the test, and analyze results. These are all the steps involved in the scientific method of research. Now, having talked about the scientific method, we saw something called an hypothesis here. What is a hypothesis? You set the hypothesis as say H0 and H1, the two hypothesis parameters, which is said to study the relationship between variables. Study the relationship between variables. When we talk about relationship between variables, we have already seen in one of our slides that we need to relate the variables in order to arrive at a very good marketing strategy. So when you devise this hypothesis, you carry out a statistical test based on the type of the variables and the number of the variables involved in the process, and something like a t-test or a f-test, a z-test, or an ANOVA, etc. can be done, so that you can make predictions based on the hypothesis after arriving at a certain statistical tool. This methodology, as we previously mentioned, is called as a quantitative research, and there is another research methodology which involves subjective approach, which is called as the qualitative approach. The subjective methodology is called a qualitative research methodology, and this is less used in a very lighter manner than the scientific method. Now, having seen about this, how do you know whether a particular method of inquiry is appropriate? The appropriateness of any method of inquiry depends on problem nature. It depends on the problem nature, and the research can be either experimental or non-experimental. An advantage of an experimental research is that it will have the experimental research will have the ability to control the exogenous variables. This is the most important advantage of using an experimental research, so that you can manipulate one or more variables which will help you in your process. Now, having seen about the method of inquiry, the next step in marketing research is the research design. What is this research design? Research design is identification of a specific method or procedure to acquire the information required. When you talk about this, it is basically a plan or an organizational framework to study and collect data. About the customer preferences or any other parameters which you want to collect in a research process. And this research design is unique. It's unique to the methodology used in the process. And there are three different types of studies. Basically, like an exploratory, descriptive, and causal studies. Using any one of these theories, you can design the research pattern for particular scenarios. Why I am talking about scenarios here? Because each scenario will demand a different type of research to be designed and different type of data to be collected. So the research design process also depends on the scenarios which you are trying to encounter in particular situations. Now, having seen about the research design, the next process is the data collection technique. Data collection technique or data collection design, in fact. Data collection design or technique. It depends on the research design. It depends on the research design in one way, because the type of research and the type of data you want, you collect data based on that. And there are two important methods, to do it. The two methods are interviews and observation. The interviews and observation. The interviews require you to ask questions and receive answers. The common modes of taking interviews are face to face or mail or through a telephone or email and internet. This is also called as survey research. In an interview, either it can be any type, like face-to-face, mail, telephone, email, or internet. What you do is you ask questions about their opinions, their choices, and receive answers from the opposite side. And in other words, you receive answers from the customers or people whom you intend to research upon. This methodology is used both in experimental and non-experimental research. It is used both in experimental and non-experimental research. The second type of collecting data is something called as observation. In which you see the behavior, which may be a past or present behavior, and through that you can predict future purchasing decisions of the consumer. It involves analyzing the company records and and also the external sources, so that you can find out what the company says about the behavior of the past behavior of its own consumers, and with that you can predict the future behavior of the same consumer or a different consumer of the same set. To do this, to record the information, in other words, from these techniques like interviews or observation, what you have to do is you need to record your results. Through that you get information about the consumer. You should analyze the results and find out what information they are trying to communicate to you as part of their answers. It is really vital. It's very vital because it serves as the close link between measurement and development of a strategy. And through that you decide on the data collection technique. data collection technique. So this is really important as far as this is concerned. While you collect data, you take something called as a sample. What is the sample? A sample is a smaller but accurate representation of a huge population. Accurate representation of a huge population. Of a huge population. Why do we take a sample? Because it is highly impossible to examine the entire population. Possible to examine the entire population. So for that you need to take some samples which is more practical. The sample is a more practical one. Sample is more practical. And to design a sample, the following questions are to be answered. To design a sample, the following questions have to be answered. From which base population you take the sample? From which base population you take the sample? And then what is the method of sample selection? Method of sample selection. What is the method of sample selection? What is the size of the sample? Sample size. These are the three different questions you need to ask before designing a sample. And there are two different methods for getting a sample: probabilistic sampling and non-probabilistic sampling. Probabilistic and non-probabilistic sampling. These are the two different methodologies to collect samples from a huge population. The probabilistic sampling, technology, or the probabilistic sampling methodology, in fact, is a very recent one. This probabilistic sampling can be done using technologies when a tool like a SPSS or any other statistical tool is available. So with the advent of technology, probabilistic methods have become more easy to approach, and this method relies on random sampling of everyone within the larger population. Random sampling of everyone within the larger population. And non-probabilistic sampling involves judgment of the investigator. Sampling based on judgment of the investigator. The reason why I termed probabilistic sampling with the advance of technology is that probabilistic sampling involves a lot of time, because you have to sample everyone within a larger population, even though it is very random. But non-probabilistic methods depends on the judgment of the investigator, so the investigator can choose which sample to take. Now with ready-made tools like SPSS available, probabilistic sampling methods, even though it consumes time, it is not considered a very difficult process in today's world. That's why I mentioned probabilistic methods are being simple with the advent of more technology. What are all the types of sampling? Some of the types of sampling are judgmental sampling, convenience sampling, simple random sampling, and stratified random sampling, which involves stratified random sampling, and so on. So these are all the different types of sampling. We will see a lot in detail about these sampling in a separate session, because explaining about sampling within this session is something very tedious. So we'll have a separate session for sampling alone, in which we'll discuss more detail in detail about all these types of sampling, so that you get to know more about these sampling techniques, so that your research, whenever it is done, is perfect enough to reap you more rewards. Now, having seen about the sample design, the next thing which we are going to see now is data. What is this data? You have these samples and it results in data. Now, data collection. Data collection is the next process which we are going to see. It is the most important phase in research process. It is the most important phase in the research process, and it can involve large amount of personnel to carry out sampling and collect data. In other words, it also involves significantly higher costs or budget. Higher cost or budget if the research is going to be too much of extensive nature. And to reduce this, nowadays telephonic methods are used. Telephonic methods are used so that you reduce your travel expenditures. With the advent of internet, data collection has become more cost friendly. Internet makes data collection as cost friendly, and it also reduced the time consumed for collecting all these data. Once you collect the data, the next process is analysis and interpretation. Analysis and interpretation. Now, this is a sheet, and you have got so many data. You have got so many data like this. Now, what is that you need to do with all these data? Will these data alone help you when devising a good strategy? No. Now, you have to analyze this data in order to arrive at a conclusion. So that your strategies are formulated in the best possible manner. Once the data is collected, analysis needs to be done. The techniques of analyzing data is dependent on the information collected during the data collection process, and also the types of measurements used. So because once you know the types of measurement and the nature of information collected, the analysis of these information becomes more simple. And this analysis and interpretation process, when it should be decided? It should be decided before data collection. You cannot collect data and then think about how to analyze it. You have to be ready with your analysis process even before you go to the field or collect data through phone, because these analyses are based on data collection. Now, after analyzing the data and interpreting the results, what is that you do? You have to prepare a research report. Research report has to be prepared. Any information cannot be only based on word of mouth. You have to have a report. So the process culminates with reporting. It culminates with the reporting process. And it includes all info like description of the research process, the samples taken, the methods used, tools, the statistical tools used, results, conclusions, and also the recommended courses of action. The report contains everything. It should be easily understandable, or in other words, it should be easily decodable by the researcher. And for this to happen, there should be a balance between completeness and conciseness. The report has to be complete, and at the same time it should be concise. It should be concise enough. For this to happen, nowadays companies are preparing two different kinds of reports. The two different kinds of reports are a technical report and a summary report. What is this? A technical report is a report which contains the methods and the underlying assumptions, whereas a summary report summarizes the findings and the process and also the conclusions as simply as possible. The summary report will not contain the entire reporting. The entire reporting will be only in technical report. Once you go through the summary report, and if you want more details, you can go to the technical report to get those details as applicable to the researcher. With this, we'll conclude the process for marketing research. In our next session, we will meet you with yet another interesting topic on marketing. Till then, goodbye. Have a nice day.